So we're back with another Festival of Legends card review, and we got some crazy legendaries in this one. As you can see behind me, RIN, Orchestrator of Doom. RIN is back. She is a 5-mana 3/6 taunt, and she's got a death rattle. Both players draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, and destroy the top 2 cards of their deck. So a lot going on here with RIN. This is on a death rattle, so a little bit delayed, but Warlock does also have some ways to activate and duplicate death rattles you need to keep in mind. So you might be able to proc this effect multiple times currently in Warlock, and obviously a lot of disruption potential there. Because you are destroying cards from your opponent's deck, so that could eat combo pieces, big value cards, whatever it is. Might be able to ruin their game plan a little bit with that destruction off the top. Also, you're going to be discarding cards. Now, notably, you're drawing the opponent 2 cards and then discarding 2 cards. So they're going to have the same number of cards in hand. This will not be a resource changer in hand. Like, they'll still have access from a card advantage standpoint to the same number of cards. But, of course, that can also be a real disruption tool that ruins your opponent's stuff, breaks up their combo. You discard some awesome combo piece. So you kind of get 4 chances here really to mess up your opponent's plan. And if their hand is actually full enough when this dies, then of course you might actually be able to burn stuff off that draw aspect as well. So the potential there is even higher. And that makes this like uber disruption tool where you're just wiping out a large chunk of your opponent's deck and resources. And then beyond that, this might also just be more beneficial for you. Although this is a symmetrical effect, of course, Warlock can utilize a lot of this asymmetrically to their advantage. For instance, if you have things that benefit off the discard, then you're going to draw 2 cards, but then maybe reap some benefits, get some discard payoffs from your discarded cards. And then, we've already seen you don't take damage card that seem to be pointing towards fatigue stuff a little bit. So maybe there's some kind of fatigue angle with destroying cards out of your deck. Who knows? Maybe there's even a Tony game plan, swapping your opponent's deck somehow. That seems expensive and hard, but there's a lot of angles and possibilities for this one, and I think at a base level it just feels so disruptive and so scary there that a lot of people are going to flock to this card, and a lot of people are going to end up getting very frustrated by this card as well. I think this one looks like it's got some real power baked into it, some real disruption potential, which Warlock can appreciate when they're playing some of those longer, more controlled game plans that Warlock likes. So all in all, I think RIN looks pretty spicy and pretty good. So next up here we have Inza, the new Shaman legendary. We saw this get teased in the portrait. Now we have the card. 5-mana 5/5 battle cry. For the rest of the game, your overload cards cost 1 less. And this is really seeming to introduce a recommitment to the overload archetype here for Shaman. We're going to see a handful of other overload cards that might play nicely here with Inza. So, you're making this pretty big upfront investment here at this 5-mana 5/5. You don't feel great playing 5-mana 5/5s these days. But once you do, of course, you're going to start reaping a lot of potential discounts across your overload cards. Hopefully that pays itself off within a few turns if you have the right size and cost of overload cards here to follow up on the Inza. That honestly makes me a little bit nervous. A lot of these game plans need to get rolling a little bit earlier. You need to start stabilizing and winning the game and turning the corner a little bit faster than this might allow. Like, yeah, you're playing this on 5, but how quickly are you really recognizing the upside of the Inza? How quickly are you turning this into a real advantage in the game? I don't know if it's going to turn the corner quite fast enough. I feel like a lot of other cost discounts and things we've seen in Hearthstone, go a little bit quicker than this one. So I'm a little scared Inza might need to be cheaper to get this rolling sooner in the game, because you might need a few turns to really start to snowball off the back of this effect. That said, if we're in a meta that's a little bit slower, a little bit grindier, which these first expansion metas, fresh rotation metas can be, you might have more time to realize the upside here on Inza. So if there's ever a time an effect like this might work at 5 mana, this is probably the time for that to happen. But I still have some doubts and concerns here that by the time you sacrifice this 5, you're just not going to make it up quick enough. So I want to talk about some of the other cards that might support this Inza overload game plan. This is the Jazz base. The instrument for this class, 3 mana 2/2, Death Rattle, your next spell costs 1 less, and then Overload while equipped to improve. So you could make your spell cost 2 less, 3 less, etc. as you're playing Overload cards, and that could help you cheat out a really big spell, for instance. And we're actually gonna see a big spell here in a minute, Pack the House, that you might want to cheat out a little bit early. So you build this up and then you get this big Death Rattle payoff to cheat something out. Now that said, the building it up part I got some questions about right now, because if you look at the last 3 expansions, there are almost no Overload cards introduced, and I would argue they're kind of way across the board in quality and mana cost. Like, they don't fit into a single theme. You can't be like an aggro deck or control deck or whatever. They're just kind of all over the place, so they don't really go together in a deck very well. So you might have to rely on core set cards to really enable the jazz base, and naturally, they may print a bunch of core set cards that do that support this, and that would help. But that also means often the card quality might be a little bit lower if they're coming from older sets and stuff. So there's some real concerns for me here on actually getting this thing rolling, and I suspect very often the Death Rattle is probably going to be like 2 less or 3 less, and then you're going to want to use it. Maybe sometimes just 1 less will make you want to use it because you just didn't hit the right Overload cards. You've also got this challenge of threading the needle a little bit, where if you are overloading a bunch, you kind of have to line up the spell reward that you're trying to cheat out at the right time when you're not overloaded. So you've got these kind of gaps and delays and this weird kind of rhythmic imbalance, which I guess is a little bit like jazz in a way, where you're just kind of adapting on the fly constantly and trying to find the right turns. But I think a lot of the times it's gonna be clunky and it's gonna be hard to find those right moments. So I have some concerns here about really setting up the jazz base, and I don't know that it's good enough on its own without all of that support to really be worth it. Just that 1 cost discount doesn't make this very good. So between getting this set up, between getting the Inza down, between finding the right time through all these overload checks, it feels like this is going to be super clunky in my mind as I'm trying to line all of this up and execute it. So that said, let's talk about Pack the House here, because this is, I think, a big overload payoff potentially for your Inza to discount this one, because you got Inza on 5. If this is discounted, you can play this on 6 as a follow-up, and this is going to summon you a random 6, 5, 4, and 3 cost minion with an overload of 2. So, big old pile of stats. That's like 18 mana worth of minions for 6/8 mana after Inza, 7/9 pre-Inza, and yeah, that's big. And yes, there will certainly be moments when that just overwhelms the opponent and they just can't deal with all of those bodies. That said, I think there could be a lot of other moments where one of 2 things happen. They can deal with all those minions. They just play whatever big AoE they have and they just wipe out this board, and you feel bad that you committed so much for it. Your whole turn and some overload for next turn, and you're setting up your deck to discount it, probably all that stuff going into it just gets wiped out by whatever efficient, warlock or mage removal or something. But then number 2, I think a lot of opponents will just kill you while you're setting up for your Inza into your Pack the House, and you just dump a bunch of stats on board. If this doesn't hit like Rush or Taunt or something, they're just doing their game plan. They're moving towards a combo. They're hitting you in the face really hard, and you're just kind of plopping down flat stats that don't really do a lot else. So I'm nervous you're just going to do all this stuff, and the opponents are like, okay, cool, man. Thanks for summoning that random 5/5 and 4/4. You're dead, So the inconsistency basically of this card makes me really nervous. When we have big spells played in Hearthstone, it's because they typically have a reliable game plan that we know we're going to get good results out of. So, if you think about Big Spell Mage playing their big spells, they're getting the 5/6 taunts, they're getting 2 giant dragons. This is a toss-up, and I don't think the power level here is comparative, even when you are discounting against stuff. And of course, the overload is rather punishing as well. So I don't know that these 4 minions really keeps up. I just think the inconsistency factor is going to hurt this one a lot. That said, as I've been saying a lot in this review set, if we're going to care about minions on board, if we're going to care about longer game plans like this one, much like I said with Inza, now is the time. So this might have a short window right after rotation where this kind of game plan works better, but like a couple sets down the line, I suspect this will be absolutely forgotten and completely unplayable. So next up here is the Flow Rider. This is a 2-mana 3/2 Naga battlecry. If you're overloaded, discover a spell from your deck. And yeah, we know that discovering spells from your deck is nice, grabbing something you want, grabbing specific cards, tutoring for things. can be really powerful, and this is, you know, kind of like a Shadow Visions on a stick basically, and it's not a bad stick. It's a 3/2 Naga, some potential Naga synergies there to consider as well. But ultimately, even if you're not playing an Inza deck or really an Overload deck, you might just use this card with a couple Overload cards here and there as a nice way to move through your deck pretty affordably here for 2 mana. We know that this is a model that has worked successfully in the past, and I could see this exiting its synergy package here with Overload and just being a generally useful card, because Overload does tend to pop up here and there in Shaman decks, even if that's not really your main game plan. And then finally for Shaman, we have the Altered Chord. I love this artwork, by the way. This looks really, really cool. This is a 5-mana spell with Lifesteal. Deal 5 damage to a minion, and it costs 3 less if you're overloaded. So another nice overload payoff card here. You're basically getting a 2-mana spell that deals 5 with Lifesteal. That's kind of like what Death Strike almost for Death Knight, but 2 mana instead of 4. And, you know, sometimes if you have to spend 5 mana on this, I don't think you'll be super sad about it. Some decks would be okay to do that in a little desperate moment if they had to, but certainly when it's 2 mana, that will feel like a nice efficient swing that gives you some stabilization. Now that said, you know, does this fit into this like Overload deck? Is this a control deck now with the Altered Chord? It's a control deck that's just kind of playing random minions, and like I don't know, I'm still not seeing this come together. Like, this package to me still seems like it's kind of all over the place, and it still feels like it's going to be really clunky getting this going. I'm sure you can map out some perfect line if you have all of this right in a row and the Jazz base is lined up well, but I don't know, man. This just feels clunkier to me than it does good so far. I doubt we're going to see a lot more Overload cards, because now the way we're revealing cards in Hearthstone, they do all of the Overload cards or all the synergy cards in one package, right? We're getting like packages, things that go together, and then other card reveals later will be some other different package. So this might be it for the Overload cards here, which means you're relying on core set so heavily that it makes me really nervous for this package's success. So next up for Rogue here, we have some pretty crazy cards. This is Bounce Around featuring Garona, the legendary song / spell for Rogue. 3 mana. Return all friendly minions to your hand. They cost 1 this turn. So this is like a super Tinwu, a super kind of Shadow Step style play, and this scares me, right? This stuff always scares me. Now look, it's not simple to get this off, right? Because if you're playing minions in the same turn, and then you're playing Bounce Around, and then you've got to replay them potentially for 1, there's a lot of mana commitment happening there. But I also know Rogue can do silly things. Rogue can discount spells. Prep may or may not be in the core set, we don't know yet, but there's plenty of other ways for rogues to cheese mana and cheese cards out, as we know. And this seems like a terrifying card for that reason. I don't have some exact combo right now ready to go for you that's going to explain why this card is scary or why this is going to be broken. I'm not even sure there is one right now, but this is one of those cards you probably have to keep an eye on and think about all the time. Like, oh man, what can I do with Bounce Around that would be crazy? What sequence of cheap minions can I play and just get some kind of either crazy value or crazy lethal? It can offer both, just, you know, utilizing a bunch of combo effects and battle cry effects multiple times, taking some big swings. All of that is possible with a card like this one. So thankfully, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into making this work well because of all those mana costs adding up over time, but I'm still thinking this card looks really, really scary. So here we're going to take a look at some other cards that might synergize, of course, with Bounce Around. This is the Disc Jockey, a new 2-mana 4/1 mech beast. This is the Octobot Returns. Now he's got a combo that adds a random combo card to your hand. So we've seen a little bit of combo stuff already for Rogue, and here is some more. And of course, these combo cards, when bounced back to hand, can do some pretty cool things also. And we've got stuff like Breakdance we're going to talk about here in a second that will return a friendly minion to your hand and summon a card with its stats with Rush. So for instance, you could bounce the Disc Jockey back and then get a 4/1 with Rush, and that's like a great way to take a trade. So the stat matters here for future cards. Otherwise, you know, 4/1 you might not be super happy about, but still can be this really aggressive force on board. For anybody that doesn't have a ping or an easy answer to this, you could see how this could turn into a really aggressive push early in the game, and even possibly getting more disc jockeys off other effects and just, you know, creating value and pressure simultaneously. That looks pretty cool to me. So between all of this, you're seeing this come together into a tempo combo package that I have a feeling Rogue is going to be able to utilize pretty well. Moving on to Breakdance, as we teased, this is kind of a new Shadow Step. This makes me wonder if Shadow Step's going to rotate out of the core set, and this is kind of a pseudo replacement, maybe a bad replacement. This one's going to return a friendly minion to your hand and summon a dancer with its stats and rush. And I say a bad replacement because, of course, you don't get the discount from Shadow Step, which enables all kinds of crazy broken stuff. But this is still pretty nice because you are getting a way to manage the board here, because you're not sacrificing those stats on board. So you're able to reuse combos, reuse battle cries, while still keeping that tempo and that initiative in play, and sometimes making it even better, actually, as well. So you can, like, attack face and then use this and get that rush minion left over behind, and then take a trade if needed as well. So this looks really strong to me. I think this is exactly the kind of card Rogue absolutely loves, finds ways to use this to great success. Good with small minions early, but also sometimes great with big minions later as well. You could do some really neat stuff with this later on too. So for me, this looks like an excellent Rogue card. And then our final card here is the Rhyme Spinner. This is a 3-mana 1/3 with Rush. And combo, gain +1/+1 for each other combo card you've played this game, not this turn, this game. So if you've got these combo synergies rolling together, the Rhyme Spinner coming down even on like turn 5 or 6 or 7 or something could be pretty big by that stage. I could easily see this getting, you know, +3, +4, +5, and being a really efficient 3-cost minion that just takes a great trade and often leaves behind a really nice threat as well. And I don't think you have to get super greedy to make this card feel good. It's not probably good until you get to 3/3, but I don't think playing 3 combo cards is a huge ask by any means. There's a lot of very cheap combo cards for Rogue that cycle really nicely and could lead into a pretty cool Rhyme Spinner here. So I don't know, combo Rogue feels like something that Rogue wants to do, and this is another great potential payoff card here to really help them play for the board with all of these rush plays. It's like kind of, you know, maintain the board while leaving behind pressure and still generating lots of value and lots more stuff to do. That's kind of cool. It actually reminds me a little bit of concoctions in a way. Those like both allow you to get things going and create pressure and still generate a lot of value and resources on the back end, so you don't like run out of stuff to do. I feel like these cards are all leading towards a similar path in a way, just, you know, combo and minions as opposed to concoctions, but frankly they might all go together really nicely, so you can both play for that early board but also play for some late game grindy value as well, which I think could work really, really well in a 4-set meta. RIN, Orchestrator of Doom, is a 4-star card. Inza is a 3-star card. Pack the House is a 3-star card. Flow Rider is a 4-star card. Altered Chord is a 3-star card. Bounce Around featuring Garona is a 4-star card. Disc Jockey is a 3-star card. Breakdance is a 5-star card. Rhyme Spinner is a 4-star card. And there you go, folks. That wraps it up for this review. Some really interesting stuff. Some pretty crazy legendaries. I'm curious if you guys like Inza more than me. Are you feeling that same sense of clunkiness and awkwardness around all of that? Or do you think it's just going to work? Are the cost discounts going to bear out over time enough that Inza is actually insane instead of Inza? I want to hear those thoughts and more in the comments below. Thanks so much as always for watching. And until next time, game on.